Hey everybody, in the last video I walked through PBS at a high level and introduced the 3 phases of Back to Basics. What I want to do now is go a little deeper and talk about the methodology those phases live inside, which is Back to Basics, the Palermo Method. Just a little backstory on the name. There was a stretch of time where I really thought about renaming Palermo Business Solutions to Back to Basics. And the reason is, as time went on, I kept running into more and more jargon, buzzwords, and frameworks that just felt way overcomplicated and unnecessary. Especially for small businesses, a lot of that stuff was actually getting in the way of helping the owners. I watched a lot of small businesses try to apply corporate and enterprise principles to their business, and they just don't work the same. Back to Basics was never meant to be gimmicky. It really came from the way I started thinking about how I train and coach and develop people. Keep it simple. Over the past 20-some years, a lot of my mentors and coaches kept bringing me back to the same thing. We need to get back to the basics. Stop overcomplicating everything. And I started to really see how much that mattered in business too. When I started applying those ideas in business, they started getting real traction. So Back to Basics is a reset. It's not a complete teardown. And to get back to the basics, we don't always need to do a full rebuild from scratch. But it's also not a quick fix. It's a values-first system for owner-led small businesses that want to grow with more intention and purpose. The whole point is to take business concepts that tend to live in different worlds of the organization, things like purpose, culture, and execution, and connect them so they all work together. Leadership, structure, operations, people, the systems they work in, sales, financials, across the board. And this is the problem it's built to solve. Most business owners I know who have failed didn't fail from lack of effort. I've been watching people work themselves into the ground until they just can't go anymore. Business owners are working their asses off. But the growth is more reactive than planned. The execution starts to separate from the plan. And when that happens, the finances start to exist in their own place. Sales is in its own little world. Operations is doing its own thing. And HR is trying to build a culture nobody else is in sync with. We hear the term silos thrown around, and that's exactly what's happening. There's no amount of effort or hustle that's going to fix this. The only thing that fixes it is structure. But to have a really strong structure, you have to have clarity about where you're at, where you come from, and where you want to go, or the structure you build isn't going to be what you need a month, a year, or 5 years from now. That's exactly what Back to Basics is for. Over the years, through a lot of ventures and pivots, and some stretches where I found myself living more reactively than intentionally, I kept coming back to the same 4 areas in business: culture, operations, sales, and financial management. Those were the 4 areas that kept showing up and proving they mattered most. Most of that thinking came from hands-on experience running my own businesses and coaching others. Some of it came from bookkeeping, accounting, and QuickBooks. Not glamorous, but it keeps a business running smoothly day to day. That's where this method came from. At first, it was just those 4 areas, and I came to call it the interconnectivity map, showing how they work together. That's where the Palermo Synergy Framework was born. But I started to recognize that the framework, by itself, wasn't going to do what it was meant to do unless it had a really strong plan underneath it, built with structure. That's how PBS Business Blueprinting was born, out of how I planned, built, grew, and sold my own businesses over the past 15 years. But backing up even further, I began to recognize that the more I grew personally, the more I grew professionally. The more self-awareness I had, the more emotional awareness I had, the more emotional intelligence I had, the better the plans I was writing became. The stronger the execution I was driving, the better the cultures I was involved in. The healthier I got, the healthier they got. My plans became stronger, not mainly because of business acumen, even though that was part of it, but because I was becoming more aware as a human being. That's the leadership clarity we talk about, the clarity you have to have first before you start building a business plan, because that clarity drives a better plan. That's where the return path, Leadership Readiness by Design, was born. And so that's the story of how the three phases came together. This entire three-phase system was built out of my own work, not just the professional work, but the personal work too. And that's why the order matters. If you skip clarity, you build the wrong structure. If the structure is weak, execution gets reactive. And when execution gets reactive, the whole system starts losing its strength. That's why these phases go in this order on purpose. So when I'm training and coaching and advising small business owners, I try not to make what we do a service menu. It's a system. You don't get to pick pieces out of order and hope they all work together. This has to be an intentional, mindful process. So that's it. That's the methodology. That's back to basics. Over the next 3 videos, I'm going to break down each phase one at a time. And I want to start with the return path, leadership readiness, because that's where the actual work begins.